Hi, Commissioner Holomo. Do you want to give us a test?
Can you hear me?
Yes, great.
Great.
We're still waiting on one more person to have a quorum. Hi, Joe. You want to give us a test on your mic?
Test, test, test.
Test, test. Okay. And Brad?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Okay, good. We have a quorum. Before I call the meeting to order, just I want to let you guys know you're going to see me doing some really weird stuff like holding this up to my face. I have scratched my lens and it's a long explanation, but I can't really see anything. So I can't see with my glasses. I can't see without them. So,
Ouch, that
just
hurts.
bear with me as I'm trying to do what we need to do. Okay. I call this meeting of the Allocations Committee to order at 4:34 p.m. We don't have any public speakers. The first item, and I believe the only voting item on our agenda today is the January 13th, 2025 Allocations Committee meeting minutes. You should all have received them in your packet, and at this time I can entertain a motion if anyone is so inclined.
I move that we accept the minutes as presented.
We have a motion from Commissioner Truzillo. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second from Commissioner Dr. Jackson, Is there any discussion? All in favor? Is there any opposition? The motion has passed unanimously. Thank you all. Our first briefing is the proposed changes for the Arts Activate program guidelines. And I will pass the mic to Assistant Director Glenn Ayers, who will be briefing us on these changes.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. All right. Moving through. So you should have received an updated draft, that's the word, of our Arts Activate guidelines, along with the CAP ones that we'll be looking at in a minute. But looking at our Arts Activate, this is just to ground us in the program, right? Our project-based funding program, fewest barriers to entry and gets the most applications of any of our funding programs at OAC. It's open to individual artists, artist collectives, nonprofit orgs, and for arts and culture programming. There's no revenue or portfolio requirements. Just as a reference for this year, Arts Activate 25, with our $1.3 million budget, round one, we funded 49 out of what was 131 applicants. Round two, we funded 42 out of 116. And round three is currently open. It closes next Monday, I believe. And then we will look at those allocations in March. Moving on. All right, so we've discussed this already. We're just gonna drill down final questions and get any sort of new tweaks or anything like that before we bring these guidelines back to you in March for a vote. But here are the four main items under consideration for changes in these guidelines, which are COP organization limitations for those receiving $80,000 or more. Remember, we started at 70, we sort of found our way to 80. The impact is it removes 9 COP organizations from program eligibility, but it could add funding for about 7 artists or, depending on how we look at it, 4 to 5 Group A organizations. That data is based off of our outcomes from Arts Activate 2024. And we're going to go into all of these in a little bit more detail. I just want to sort of high level this real quick. We're looking at limiting funding to applicants to only once per year. The impact was only on a small number of funded applicants. given our sort of history. We are looking at changing the panel admin scoring from 75-25 back to 70-30. This is moving 5 points from the panel back to OAC admin scores. And we are going to be looking at, and more in depth today, on points awarded to the fewest proposed events in any given city council district, right? That was the pleasure of this committee last month. And then also make Go See DFW mandatory as deliverable number 2 rather than just submitting a flyer when it comes to promoting events through Arts Activate. This will help regulate the needs of marketing Arts Activate projects and making them open to a broader public search, basically. All right, so we're going to look into our proposed $80,000 COP limit. Now I have already caught that I didn't make that particular edit in your draft, so it is now in my updated draft from March. And I'm going to be wording this as $80,000 or more to be inclusive of that $80,000 number, because that always comes into play somehow is how that's going to be interpreted. So I want to be as clear as possible. What I mentioned before is the 9 organizations that will be impacted by this change. Anyone that was basically making 80,000 to 100,000 are listed here, and you'll see the Arts Activate funding or no funding that they had applied for in 2024, and then of course sort of year to date for 25. The NF is not funded. You'll see if they had applied in any given round as an R1, 2, or 3. DNA means did not apply, and DNQ means did not qualify. The Nasher, for instance, applied for an Arts Activate project that was already in their COP scope this year, and so they did not qualify for funding. Any questions on this one? I know we've gone through this table basically before, so we don't necessarily need to dig in super deep unless you have any other questions. All right. All right. And of course, we will take this into consideration as we look at our allocation for COP next year to see, you know, how did this impact those COP organizations? Is that something to look into as we look at allocations for COP? All right. The other change we're looking at is that applicants can only be funded once per year. As a reminder, the only ones that were eligible to be funded twice were individual artists and Group A orgs, so those under 100,000. They could have 2 projects. And so that outcome from Arts Activate 24 was only 11 artists and organizations who were funded twice. That's 7 artists and 4 orgs. And you'll see how many Alana were. And we've again talked about this before. Knowing the outcomes of our allocations, I do not see this presenting a disparate impact on our Alana artists and organizations. I simply think that it's just going to spread those opportunities to a more varied grouping of Alana artists and organizations. Any questions? All right, moving on. Now we're going to get into some, when Emmanuel sent you sort of that update email with major changes. The major changes was just new data to help support this change. There's nothing like crazy major as far as our discussion topic today. Just to like, yeah, significant changes. Yeah, okay. Just significant added supporting information. So again, we are moving that 5 from Arts Activate 2025, the 5 points for panel under the cultural plan priorities. Those items will be moved into the intention scoring, right? Into that 20 points. And then we're going to take those 5 points, put them back into the admin scoring for 2026. And again, it'll be the districts with the fewest proposed events for 5 points. All right. So let's see how that looks off of some benchmarking that I've done to see what kind of impact we're looking at. In your current draft, this is how this scoring criteria is written. And then we're going to talk about basically everything that's highlighted and bolded to get clarity and your advisement as we move forward in this. I know this seems like it should be simple, but there are definitely some clarifying parts of this scoring criteria that we're going to want to tighten up. So the applicant has proposed an event or events which take place in a city council district where the fewest proposed events have been submitted. The proposed events lists are based on the cumulative applicants' proposed events locations in a respective round, right? The proposed projects must have at least one in-person event that serves their intended audience. If multiple locations are listed in a proposal, the average score of locations will be used, and then it's 5 points for that particular district, 0 points for the others. And then that bottom part right there is you can't use PO boxes, but also Dallas City Council districts which are tied for the fewest number of proposed events will receive a score of 5 points, right? So we're going to be looking at, do we want to just consider, oh, yes, Commissioner Spelsey.
Oh, I figured you'd call on me once you were done. I had a suggestion that we make the number of projects in a certain district cumulative across the year for the Arts Activate. So like for round one, obviously it would just be what came in for round one, but then for round two, we could go with the projects that got funded in round one plus what was submitted in round two, so that so if we had a bunch in a certain district get funded in round one and very few from that district in round two, it would still equalize it. Does that make sense?
That was one of our questions for the committee today, so thank you for
Okay.
bringing it up. Do you want to
Yeah.
open that for discussion
let's-
among the committee right now?
Why don't we wait until, because I have some supporting information on that.
Right.
So we're absolutely, and thank you for that, we're all on the same line. So let's go to the next slide. So we're going to talk about districts first, okay? So I want to propose to you, or pose rather, should we look at just the one singular district with the fewest, or help to spread this out ever so slightly to, I'm saying, the top 3 districts with the fewest, right? Because as I was looking at the data, there were always, a few districts that really did have so few events that it would make sense and would make more of an impact that I believe this committee is trying to make in this particular scoring criteria to really move the needle for this, right? So I want to show you some examples of what this looks like. So I did 2 benchmarkings, round 1 from Arts Activate 2024 and round 2 from 2025. So you'll see in the example of just looking at, if we just chose the one district with the fewest proposed events for a particular round, this is sort of what happened to what ended up being proposed as or recommended for funding, right? We had 18 out of 51 artists that changed their order in the scoring for that particular scenario that was recommended for funding. And then we had 9 organizations that changed the order of their scoring. Now, just because they changed order, it didn't necessarily mean that their funding outcome would have been any different. Is this making sense?
No.
Great. No. So if let's just say, as an example, we have our individual artists listed out and we had 15 and they're ranked 1 to 15, right? Let's say 1 to 5 were funded, right? So what I'm saying is that the changes in score would have switched up some of those rankings. So it wouldn't be 1 to 15. It might be like 1, 3, 2, 5, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 down, right? However, that didn't necessarily mean the outcome of their funding recommendation would have changed. So even though maybe 1 and 2 switched, they still would have been recommended for funding. Or maybe numbers 12 and 13 were flipped, but they weren't recommended for funding, right? So the outcome as far as the changes in their funding were much lower, right? So we had 1 artist out of 33 in that particular 24 round 1 that actually would have received funding had we had this implemented.
Glenn, can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
Since we're looking at historical data, it's not a completely, it's a little bit of benchmark information for us, but if we make this change going out this year, there wasn't anything to encourage some of the artists and arts organization who historically scored very well.
Yes.
And so what I would anticipate we would see is if they pay attention to this
Yes.
and they realize that they're going to lose 5 points, they're not going to have the benefit of all of this historical data
Yes.
to know that it will or won't. So the hope would be that this would motivate our arts organizations and artists who tend to score high enough to get funding to look at doing their projects in these districts.
Correct.
And there's no way for us to look at that because we don't have that yet.
We simply do not have that data. What I am trying to establish in this particular example is to say that instead of just looking at that singular district to looking at those top 3 districts with the fewest, moves more numbers. right? We have a little bit more of an impact on shifting that that ranking. So when we go in to try to encourage people to look at what we will present as data, historic data on which districts have the fewest number of proposed events, that we can hopefully move it a little bit more broadly in that sense. Thank you for that clarity. So again, if we're just looking at the one district with the fewest for that Arts Activate 2025 round 2, this is the bottom left corner. 0 changes in our artists and 6 changes in organizations as far as scoring order. But as far as changes in funding, there was no difference in outcome, right? Then if we took on the right column, the example of the top 3 fewest districts, we see an increase in a couple of these. So as far as changes in scoring order, we go from 18 to 20 artists. No other changes as far as organizations, and then the changes in funding are the same. Arts Activate 2025 round 2, we see a significant change in scoring order for our artists and organizations, but again, the changes in funding aren't there. And then to your point, Chair Bragalone, as we move forward into this scoring criteria, it's our intention to present historic funding information on which districts have received more proposed events to help encourage those to do so.
So is it, I'm going to try to say this properly. It's fair to say that we have had applicants for, in the past, we've had projects, we've had artists apply to do projects in these districts where we don't have as much art, but those artists have not historically scored well enough to get into funding. So the biggest benefit that I see based upon your data and what we're trying to do is to encourage artists and arts organizations who are scoring well enough to receive funding to consider moving their projects into these districts where they've not historically planned to do their projects.
Correct.
Okay.
So what we're seeing is that if this, for the most part out of this data, those who were scoring well enough to get funded, got funded regardless of where they were, as far as district was concerned. That's also because they're looking at their typology, and that's playing a big role into this as well, because that's 10 points, right?
Right.
So I don't need to, we're not making a decision on this particular thing yet. I think you'll get more of an understanding of top 3 district in these next couple of slides as we talk about, next slide, please. As we talk about, oh no, never mind, we'll get to there in a second. As far as like 1 or 3, but that's what that looks like currently using our current data. The other 2 things that we're going to talk about are our average scores and council districts that tie in the number of proposed events, right? So looking at average scores, this is exactly what we do with typology, and it's what I felt was appropriate to continue to do with districts, where this is not an all or nothing. We will average the score based off of the number of events and where they're taking place for any given applicant and their application. So, like typology scoring, council district scores will be an average score based on the total number of proposed events by an applicant. For example, if District 3 has the fewest proposed events and receives a 5-point score, applicant A has 3 events in District 3. That's it. So 3 times 5, because they get their 5 points for those, 15. They have a 15 score divided by 3 events, 5 points total, right? It's a very roundabout way of going to the obvious 5 points, but that's what that looked like. Applicant B, for instance, they have 2 events in District 3, great, that's the 5-point scorer, but also 2 events in District 7. So we have 2 that are getting 5 points for 10, and then 2 that are getting 0 for 0. So their total score for all of their events is 10. Out of 4 events, they get a 2.5 point score total. Making sense? That's the same process we do for our typology, so it is not an all or nothing. And it helps sort of even the playing field because applicant A should get 5 points. All of their stuff is happening in District 3, the fewest. Applicant B should absolutely get some credit for doing something in District 3, but not full credit because applicant A is putting all of their resources into District 3 and applicant B necessarily is not, right?
Mhm.
Good?
Yeah.
As far as the explanation goes. Okay, great. Now ties. tied council districts for fewest or, depending on how we move, the top 3 fewest proposed events will be grouped together and considered eligible for scoring criteria. So for example, if we're just looking at the singular fewest district, District 1 and District 3 each have 2 proposed events, making each the fewest. So all applicants with a D1 or D3 proposed event will receive 5 points for each respective event in that district. Yes? Great. Now, if we did a top 3 fewest, District 1, for instance, has 2 events. Districts 3 and 12 have 3 events, and District 10 has 7. So those 4 districts have the 3 fewest number of proposed events. So all applicants with any of those 4 districts will receive 5 points for each event. Yes? Okay, great. All right. Next slide. Here we go. I had a lot of fun with this morning, by the way. All right, let's clear this slide real quick. And this is to your point, Commissioner Spellacy, we're going to be talking about each round or a rolling total for each year. All right. This is also where we can see the difference between funding only one district, or scoring for that fewest district, or scoring the top 3 fewest. On the left, those 2 tables are from Arts Activate 2023, and the right, the gray, are Arts Activate 2024. On top, we're going to be looking at each round individually, right? So we're looking at, let's say, the top left, Arts Activate 2023, round 1. We have this in order of council district, right? 1 to 14. That next column, 2023 R1 for round 1, you'll see 3 highlighted. The green in District 12 was the fewest. Yellow is the next, number 2, second place in District 10 with 7 events. And then District 3 is the 3rd fewest, or however you want to say that, with 8 events, right? So if we're looking at only scoring the fewest, only those 3 events in that entire round would get 5 points, right? If we decided to sort of expand that to the top 3 fewest, that would mean districts 3, 10, and 12 would get 5 points. This is what I mean by sort of spreading it out. All 3 of those districts have very few events going on in them for that particular round. So to me, looking at this, it would make sense to sort of spread that criteria out to try to make what I, again, believe this committee wants to make is an impact for those particular districts. Because I think our next smallest is, what is that, 14 events in District 8, right? So now that's a big difference, right? So just again, some thought. And so we see here, we're just looking at round 1. Round 2 on this top left table, we're just looking at round 2. So District 1, we have District 1, District 10 with 1 event is the fewest. District 3 with 3 events is the second fewest. And Districts 8 and 12 tie for the 3rd. So this is an instance where all 4 would get 5 points for that, right? And you can see some of these are going to stay consistent throughout, and some of them are going to change, especially change their ranking, 1, 2, or 3. And then again, we're looking at round 3, just round 3. So District 10, 11, and 3 would get 5 points, right? And then I've done a total of all of those. So to Commissioner Spellacy's point, if we look at the table below, this is that rolling total or cumulative total throughout just Arts Activate 2023. I think that should be, looking at this, it's as far as staff is concerned, drawing some boundaries to just considering what's happening in that year. We can certainly open up for more discussion on a rolling total year over year. I just think that starts getting stickier as we more, yeah. So if we just stick within Arts Activate 2023, round 1, the outcome is the same, right? And then you'll see the column grayed out. That's the singularly round 2. And then the following one is round 1 plus round 2. And actually that outcome is exactly the same. District 12, 10, and 3 rank respectively, right? And then we gray out for round 3, and then we have the sum of rounds 1, 2, and 3, that rolling total. And again, the outcome is all 3 of those districts in every single round, we find them with the fewest number of proposed events, right? And so we're continuing to target council districts with the fewest proposed events to try to leverage those proposed projects for more scoring, right? Or for a higher score. So now that I know that's a lot to take in. I've done the exact same thing for Arts Activate 24. And again, you'll see for the most part on that bottom right table for the rolling total, we see consistency throughout the different districts. But the table on the top right, where we're just considering them individually by round, we see a little bit more of a shift.
Yes, Commissioner Jackson.
Oh, your mic. Sorry, Commissioner Jackson, your mic.
Good evening, everybody. The question is, looking at the graph on the top left that we're talking about, District 11 in round 2, and did I miss something? It has 0, and District 13, it looks like it had 0 too.
Yeah, so the way, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, the way this is written, if there are no proposed events in any given district, I mean, honestly, there's really nothing we can do. If no one's doing anything in those districts, they're not eligible for scoring. Now,
Okay, so the district then itself becomes ineligible for scoring because, I mean, I guess because we were looking at the lowest number in each district, so wouldn't 0 be?
so 0 would be the lowest, but that would mean that
No.
we've received no applications to do a service. Yeah.
Okay.
So
gotcha.
that I'm glad you brought up that point because I was thinking about this exact question that you brought up. And I honestly don't know how to address that other than one, this year, and I believe in 2024, that did not happen. We had proposals in every single district. Now, obviously, that's not guaranteed. We are putting out a call for applications to ask people to do an arts and culture project kind of wherever they want, right? And trying to leverage where they do those, hence this scoring criteria as well. So again, what we will do is we will present them with historic information on the number of events that are happening. So hopefully they can make an educated decision on where they want to do their event. So we don't find ourselves in a place where there are districts with 0 proposed events. Now, if that's the case, we will then look at those next districts for points that are actually where we do have events taking place. Yeah, sorry.
Commissioner Holomo.
Thank you. So bear with me because I kind of like this approach, really. But I think that we're going to be replicating each Arts Activate if we go with this only, because I think what's missing is, for example, 2023, the total proposed events for District 1 is 241. But what we don't know is how many are actually from District 1 that are applying, either an arts organization or an artist, and then how many are actually funded. Because I feel like that would also be important, because if we keep just going based on the total number of applicants, I think we're missing the bigger picture, which, to address something that you said earlier, Glenn, I really think that a SWOT analysis for each district in terms of looking at the little ecosphere or the ecosystem there, in terms of venues and artists who live there and arts organizations who are based there and opportunities and how many apply for grants. I think that kind of helps us to shape your answer to the question of, how do we get more proposed events there? So that's just my 2 cents worth. I think we're heading in the right direction and this looks really good. I just think we need to fill in some more information. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Holomo. Commissioner Spellacy.
I actually was going to say the same thing. I agree. I think after round 1, we should only count funded projects from previous rounds. Because if we're counting every proposed project, but they didn't get funded, that's not actually helping that district because nothing's happening there anyway because it didn't get funded, right? So to me, it makes sense to take the total number of proposed within the current round But for the later rounds, I think we only count the funded projects, or maybe I don't know. To me, the funded projects are what really matter because those are the ones that happen. Um, I think to me, it's looking at how many did we actually get funded for each district, not how many were proposed. And so I don't know if you guys have any bright ideas for how to, and maybe then we use the previous round, even if it goes back to the round 3 from the previous year or something like that. I don't know.
So, I'm gonna, whoops, I'm sorry, Brad, did I cut you off?
No,
Commissioner
you're
Spillier,
good.
were
I
you
think you
finished?
guys understand. Yeah.
So, yeah, a couple of things I want to kind of add to the comments of those commissioners is, one question I was going to ask you, Glenn, is like what sort of marketing or education we'll be doing about the points? Because I think the big unknown factor here is how this change in scoring is going to impact decisions that are made by artists to propose a project. So this is going to be like a lot of the work that we've done in other programming where first of all, kudos, Glenn, you've done an excellent job of giving us a lot of benchmark data to consider. But one of the things that we really won't know until we jump into this project is whether those projects that historically score well because of all the things that make those projects score well, will they be motivated by this change, by the fact that they're going to lose a full 5 points and by the opportunity to gain 5 points, will they be motivated to consider doing their projects in another district? Or as you can see from the data, if they are not, we've done a lot of work to maybe not accomplish what we want to accomplish, which is the point that both Commissioner Holomo and Commissioner Spelliscy are making is we'll go to all this trouble, but if historically the artists and arts organizations who propose projects for the districts with the lowest number of arts are not scoring well enough, then we've made a change, but we haven't accomplished our mission. So, and I'm not sure if I am not mathematically astute enough to know whether it seems like Commissioner Spelliscy's suggestion might have an impact on that, but I don't know.
So I'm glad that we have until March to sort of look at this, because I think this is going to be really interesting. I think there might be two things that I'll look at now, hearing your questions or hearing your suggestions. One is to do exactly what you're saying and sort of update, and I'll sort of see if there's really a significant change between the final outcome of a year before to help us inform of round 1, because that could work out. I don't think that would get too sticky. I think that would be fine. Or to see what would happen if we just started with round 1 and the fewest. The other might be looking at what is recommended for funding and finding the top number of districts with the most events, and they don't get any points. And it's all the other districts that get points. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the impact is on maybe more districts, and those essentially that we have the highest number. Now that gets into sort of like, I don't want that scoring criteria to seem punitive against, right? So like we're approaching the same end game, but in kind of two different directions. Like District 14, right, historically gets a ton of events, or District 2 also, right? High number of events. So it would mean that like District 2, District 14, and District 1 would get 0 points. I don't know. And then everyone else, every other district proposed would get 5. And I think that sort of touches maybe on some of this discussion too. So I can kind of play with that and see if that does change some of those outcomes to help with that.
I think another question would
Yeah.
be, is 5 points enough? Like we can tell that 5 is not making a huge difference.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you made that a different number, if that would, but I mean, at the very least, this exercise has highlighted a problem that we've talked about for a long time, which is we have some districts that are not getting
Mhm.
the same or even close to the same share of events. And
Yeah.
how do we make that happen? I'm going to call on Commissioner Hornbuckle first, even though some of you may have had your hands up first because he has not spoken to this yet. And then when Commissioner Hornbuckle is finished, we'll follow with Commissioner Spelliscy and then Commissioner Holomo, because I think that was the order of the hands, but if it was not, please forgive me. Commissioner Hornbuckle.
Good afternoon. One of the things that I was thinking to encourage districts, because at this point, I'm not hearing why these districts aren't, there's not an interest in these districts. And Commissioner Alomo, uh, I agree with what he was saying. We probably need some more data. But a suggestion is for those districts that aren't getting enough attention, maybe we should identify places where they could perform and areas that they don't have to do that kind of research if they're not familiar with that particular area to help out the process of them going into a district that they may not be familiar with or know if there are venues there and that sort of thing. Um, I'll be curious to know if we could share what's available in those areas and maybe that could encourage them also.
I mean, yeah. Also, I'll push on that a little bit. We are asking for proposals. And so there is an onus on the applicant to do the work. I think of this, and I push on this looking at staff capacity, if I'm being honest. There's so much time in general throughout the year to do research on where things could happen, and happy always to try to help. But I would hesitate to put any sort of onus on us to help guide our applicants in that particular way. Now, that being the case, that is sort of the current circumstance where we have applicants that are looking on doing things in different typologies to increase their typology score. So the activity of finding where to do things, I think, is basically the same. They're now just finding an intersection between typology and also council district.
Well, and that is a project that our equity committee chaired by Commissioner Meek is working on. So it's an excellent suggestion, Commissioner Hornbuckle, and perhaps we can reach out to the committee. Perhaps there's some collaboration between committees. I hear what you're saying about staff, but that is a number one priority of that committee. And I don't know if they are looking at, if they're looking at it with a typology bent like we are. So I think this would be important information to share with Commissioner Meek and her committee.
Yes.
These statistics that you've pulled, so that they know that there's a real clear need for location, and that maybe that work can be done in a different way. Okay, Commissioner Spellacy, and then Commissioner Holomo, and then Commissioner Truzilla.
Okay, so as you were talking, Commissioner Bragalone, I had a couple thoughts. One, so the goal is to get more projects into the districts that are historically not getting very many, right? And so if that's the goal is we need to get more applications in those districts. If we only go by the number of proposed projects within a certain round, nobody's going to know who the lowest 3 districts are until the round is already submitted. You know what I mean? So, and they can look at the historical data, of course, but my suggestion actually would be that we just go based on the previous year's total funded projects. So we take the total number of funded projects from the previous year's Arts Activate, and we award points so that people know going in, I'm going to get points for going in these districts. And hopefully the goal would be then that it would start to roll it a little bit, like year on year. We might get, like, these are the bottom 3 this year, so they get more points, so hopefully they get more projects the next year, and then the bottom 3 that year would get more points for the following year. And that way we're awarding points, number one, to projects that actually happened, that were funded, and number 2, it gives the orgs and artists the information going into the application. Like, they know these are the areas where we're targeting for those extra points. Otherwise, I think it's too fuzzy because they just won't know, because they won't know what's getting submitted for that round until they've already submitted. So that would be my suggestion.
Commissioner Holomo.
Thank you. So yeah, I really want to go back to what I said earlier. If we're just looking at the typography and not engaging artists and arts organizations as to the why they're not looking at these places, I think we're doing a disservice and we're premature in trying to award extra points or take points off. And then when Chair Bartolone, you mentioned something about the districts that these artists are applying to do their projects in, it made me think, well, the reason why they want to do the projects is they probably have good relationships with the venues. They know that it's very easy. They're not going to have to go in through the whole education. And then I'm thinking about the cultural centers that are there and easy to work with. So again, it's, you know, I really hope that we're not being punitive, as somebody said earlier. But we have to look at the big picture. It's not just about us trying to guess or, you know, doing our own research. We really need to go to the artists and the arts organizations and ask them why they are not considering these districts. That's it.
Thank you. And, you know, just to keep this all in perspective, today we're talking about guidelines, and some of the topics that are being brought up relate to how we communicate and market the programming to the artist, which are two related but different things, because we don't address the marketing piece in the guidelines. So that makes it very difficult. You're 100% correct, Commissioner Holomo. And I had another thought, but it has gone out of my head. So maybe it'll come back while Commissioner Truzilla is sharing with us her thoughts.
I agree with Commissioner Holomo on, you know, we're sort of guessing and not really knowing. That's first. I also agree with Commissioner Spellacy that it's hard to do month by, you know, quarter by quarter. Instead, look at the previous years. And then finally, are we still doing that Space Saver initiative?
So that
Is
is,
it up and running?
it's not.
I know that it was being worked on earlier last fiscal year, but I don't think it's up and running again.
That is also a CP&E committee.
Right.
That's all part of the same conversation right now.
And it's on, and I
Space
don't know,
Finder.
Commissioner Truzilla, if
Space
this,
Finder, thank you.
yeah, Space Finder, I don't know if this impacts your thoughts, but another thing that I think we're not taking account or is not considered in this whole analysis is we're looking at historical data on who has applied, and we're talking about where this group of artists want to perform their art. But a big piece that's missing is, what about artists that are actually in these districts? Like, what's the relationship between where the artist lives and works compared to where they want to deliver their art? And we haven't looked at where the artists are actually from. Is our problem that we don't have enough artists who are in districts 3, 10, and 12 who know about, or because that is a big difference, right? Loading up all your stuff and going to perform, or as Commissioner Holomo pointed out, performing in venues that you are familiar with, that are in your district, where you routinely attend other artist shows, you know, that, and I'm not sure how we get that. But about the only way that we can address that in the guidelines is in the way we do the scoring. The rest of that is all a discussion about, it's really a staff function. Am I right about that, Glenn?
And then there's the issue with changing districts.
Right, which is a moving
It's a
target.
moving target.
Yeah.
Yeah.
District
Yeah.
12 changed significantly.
Yeah. So I'm sorry.
No, Glenn, were you finished, Commissioner Truzilla?
Yes.
Okay, Glenn, I think wants to speak to all of those points.
Yes. So funding from the previous years, I do like that because it actually gives someone something to latch onto as far as their decision-making process, so they're the most informed. So as a part of our discussion for next month, I'll do benchmarkings essentially on that. We'll look at which of the districts were the fewest for that year of funded projects. And we'll sort of look at where those gaps are and use maybe that as our leverage for scoring. So we're looking at that. I think that's great. The only hitch that I have in that is the timing of how we roll out the program versus, so we won't get, it'll depend, right? We have our proposed events, but that's not always where those events end up happening at the end game. Now, those variations may not be significant enough to really put a kink in the system, but ideally what we would want is everyone's final report data where everything happened at the end of the game, at the end of the year, to use as our marker. That would happen September of the end of the fiscal year. The June or July before that is when we start round one for the following fiscal year, right? So our scoring data would not be fully complete if we wanted to look at final report data. So,
3, 2, 1 instead of 1, 2, 3.
right,
Prior fiscal instead of making it.
yeah. We're looking at the most previous 3 rounds rather. Yeah. Okay. That would solve that. That would absolutely solve that. Now, again, though, those funded projects, we change our funding criteria year to year. So 2 years ago, it was a 70-30 split. This current year, it's a 75-25 split. So I'm not saying that these are insurmountable challenges, and I'm not saying that the differences in these are going to make a significant change in what those districts are, and probably not, right? But that's what I'm saying is those are the things that I'll be taking into consideration as I prepare that information for you.
And then can I ask you, am I just being dense about this? But if we switch to funded, does that help if there haven't been any funded programs in these districts, or does that just eliminate them?
Well, I mean, the number of funded is going to be quite fewer.
But 0 will count in that situation where it doesn't count here?
So that's where we might start looking at the who's funded the most
See
and
what I'm
not giving
saying?
them points and giving everyone else
Right,
points.
because if the problem has been that not only do we not get applications for these districts, even when we get them,
We're not
they
seeing.
don't get funded. They
Yeah.
are not scoring well enough to get funded. So then
Mhm.
if you just start looking at the funding criteria, those
Yeah.
districts aren't being considered by the way that you've done it the first time, because 0 is 0
Right.
and doesn't get considered.
So that's a great remedy for that. Perfect. Awesome. Okay. Another point from some of the comments that were made. Why not those continuing districts, the cultural centers, the easy to perform in because they have a relationship? I want to stress the other side that we're not really talking about in this conversation, which is the recipient of those services. So our residents, and reminding that we need to ground ourselves in the fact that we need to meet our residents where they are for these artistic services. So while it is nice that artists and organizations have good relationships with particular venues and individuals, that our charge, especially in this funding program, is to meet our residents where they are when it comes to having access to arts and culture experiences. So it's because that argument, if we take it one step back, is, but the Moody's in the Arts District, but Booker T has the resources I need, but Griner has the resources I need, right? And that excuse of, but it's easy to do it there, is exactly why we implemented typology scores in the first place, to get people out and about and to go and to think creatively on where they're doing and how they're doing their artistic services. We must continue to support our artists and organizations by providing them resource, knowledge, connections with who we know, and also making sure that our residents have access to those services. So when we're looking at which districts and, oh, but it's hard to do it here. Yeah, that's why they're not being done here. Our call is for you to find these districts and to go do something there so people have something close to them. That was it. And then meeting, yeah, that was it. That's all I had for that one.
Okay, so fascinating discussion. I'm going to kind of call a little bit of a halt to it because it's only our first briefing item, but I do want to, yes, Commissioner Truzilla.
Sorry, just one little thing. Is there any reason why we can't just create a quick Survey Monkey and ask why you chose from like last year's list of people that were funded, why you chose the district you chose, just so we can have some type of idea? We may not get that many responses, but we may get some.
Question survey. Yeah, that's good. Thank you. So I want to kind of circle back to where we are so we make sure that we give the office what they need from us, because based upon the timing, we will need to vote at the March meeting.
Yes, that's correct.
So, so we started with the overall proposition that there is general support for and this is from the last meeting, that there's general support for making a change to the guidelines and in particular the scoring process that would help promote getting art into districts where we are not seeing very many arts activate programs. I just want a quick show of hands. Is everyone still in support of that general principle and using the guidelines to do that? Okay, and so Glenn has come back to us with all sorts of ways that we might do that and with some basic questions for us. And one of the questions was, do we want to look at the district with the fewest or the bottom 3 districts with the fewest or some other number? So if I could just see a show of hands of how many of the commissioners would be more in support of looking at the bottom 3 or the bottom, fill in a number other than 1. How many of us are in support of that? The bottom 3. So I see 3 in support of the bottom 3. And then how many are in support of limiting it to just the bottom 1? Okay, I don't have input from Commissioner Spellacy, Holomo, or Hornbuckle. Could you guys share with us what your thoughts are?
I think it depends on what Glenn kind of looks at when he looks at how, because if we decide to go with the previous years, for instance, that may be a different decision. It like he said, it may be not the bottom 3, it may be removing points from the top 3 or something along
Sure.
those lines.
Well,
I would say I'd like to hear Glenn's recommendation on that particular item after we decide on what we're going to use for the criteria.
And the purpose of my question is not to tie us into something, but to just think about philosophically. Do you feel more like limiting it to 1, recognizing that the data could change, nobody's tied into what they believe, but just philosophically, do you lean more towards just trying to provide more access to the 1 district or to provide more access to a bottom group of districts? Okay, and Commissioner Holomo?
I think if we're spending this much time discussing it, it's premature for us to put something finite. But I agree with Commissioner Spellacy, it depends on what Glenn comes up with and how we choose to find it. I just think it's premature. Because
Can't
we
say one
can't
way or the
answer
other
the
right now.
question.
Okay, and Commissioner Spellacy, you're philosophically a bigger group, but based upon the data. And then Commissioner Hornbuckle, did you have oh, sorry, we can hear from him some other time. Okay, and then and this may be hard to do right now, but the next big question was, based upon a round or a rolling situation, and then also how we calculate the rolling. Do you feel like there's any input that we can get from the commissioners that will help you on those 2 questions right now, or do you need to go back with everything we've told you today?
What I've gathered so far is that we want to see a trend, not just 1 round. That's kind of what I've gathered from this group right now. So I will move in that direction because I think that helps give us more solid data.
So is everybody in agreement with that we're looking for a trend, and we're looking to address, we don't know the number of districts, but we're looking to address that group that's at the bottom, whether that turns out to be 1 district or 3 districts or 5 districts. We are looking to make a change that will motivate the artists to apply and perform in this bottom area of the Arts Activate landscape. Anybody in disagreement with that? And we're going to send Glenn back with all this information, and he's going to come back to us in March. Just remember, I know that Glenn and hopefully Julia will be back at the March meeting. Just keep in mind that we will have to make a recommendation to the Arts Commission at our March meeting. So when you get those materials, give them some time. And if there are questions that you feel like your input in advance of the meeting would be helpful to the staff, just shoot them an email. Don't shoot it to the entire committee because we do not want to run afoul of the Open Meetings Act. But any questions that you have, you can certainly send them to Glenn and his staff ahead of time so that they are prepared, because we won't have any time to go back. Okay, anybody feel compelled to add something on this, or may we move to the next briefing?
Can I get it? Just one point of, or
Sure.
two, I suppose. The average score and Tide also getting a score. I think we're all on board for that. Is that correct?
Is
Using-
that correct?
Okay, great.
Good.
All right, that's what I thought.
Okay, so now our next briefing is on the proposed changes for fiscal year 25-26 Community Arts Program Guidelines. And Rhonda is going to brief us on that.
Yes, hello everyone. Rhonda will brief you briefly. It's good to see everyone again. So you know CAP, just as a quick recap, this is a program where you can request an artist. It's an as needed, when needed program. And I think everyone is pretty much familiar with it. So just to refresh your memory, this year our budget was $550. And we have 45 individual artists and 20 organizations on the roster right now. So moving on. Now, for this year, we did not make a lot of major changes to the guidelines. We kept everything pretty much the same. And what we tried to do was maybe simplify things and clarify things that may not have been that clear before. Based on some of the questions we've received, we just wanted to make things a little bit more easy to understand. So on page 7, and I hope the pages are right, but on page 7, we just clarified a little bit as far as the materials that needed to be submitted for application. There was some confusion as to what was required and what was suggested. So we made that break pretty clear, hopefully, and more understandable. On page 10, with the artistic services contracts, we provided clarity as far as the reallocation of funds that happens in May. Just to refresh your memory, in May, usually by May 15th, we will review all of the contracts that we have and all of the bookings that we have received. And if any artist has not yet by May spent 40% of their allocated funds, we will gently remove some of the allocated funds and share that with someone else who may have already spent all of their funding. The reason we do this is because we want to make sure that by the end of the fiscal year, we have exhausted all of the funding. And sometimes by not doing that, we end up with a surplus at the end. On page 11, as far as the artist evaluation and final report form, we made it a little bit more clear what that form is and the reason why we need it. We've had a few artists who question why they need to submit that. And so we specified a little bit more as to why we need it. This is actually, the final report form is submitted every time a CAP artist provides a service. So this is not something they turn in every 3 months. Every time they submit a service, in order to get their payment or compensation, they have to submit a final report. So it was important for us to clarify why that is in there, why that's a requirement. Next, please. Thank you. On page 12, we wanted to clarify this because I know we got a lot of feedback that, oh, we don't provide services at schools. And yes, that is true. However, we wanted to just explain that we do provide services at schools as long as it's not an in-school curriculum type service. If the school is having a fall festival on a Thursday night or on a Saturday afternoon and they need an artist, and this is a community focused event, we will consider sending an artist. Of course, we have to weigh all the other things, but we will consider sending an artist for something like that. What we stopped doing was sending artists to classrooms or assemblies or things that are just for the students or just for the staff. So I hope this point is a little bit clearer and it gives a little relief in that we still will support our schools, but just for community facing events. Let's see, next one, CAP request requirements. We provided clarity regarding the risks of arranging artists, and we just had an experience today before you submit a request. And I'm gonna pause here for a second. So if you know an artist, this is your best friend, oh my goodness, this is great, you know him, so you can call him and make arrangements beforehand. And I know you're on the roster, so I'm just gonna put you on my calendar for Tuesday at 7. But then you submit a request and the request says he's supposed to be there Thursday at 8. there's a discrepancy there, and it causes a little bit of trouble. So we're not discouraging people from making arrangements with the artists ahead of time. However, please, we need to make sure that that information is translated in the same manner on the request form, because that's what we go by. And the one thing that some of the requesters don't realize is that if the information that we have doesn't match their final report or their invoice, it delays their payment. Okay, and we don't want that. We want them to get paid on time. So we hopefully made that a little bit more clear as well, so that when the guidelines are read, they realize if I'm going to make arrangements with someone ahead of time, I need to make sure that OAC gets the same information so that everything's good and I get my check on time. All right. I'm going to pause. Any questions on that one? No, good. Very good. So we shouldn't have to change the next year again. Miss.
To the choir.
I know.
Commissioner Truzilla.
I just want to make sure I understand the community-facing events with schools. If it is a, a fall festival that's held, but it's only for the students and their parents and the staff, that's considered a community event. It's not open to the public, but it's open to, it's not in school hours, and it's like on a Saturday.
So if the target audience is only the students and the parents, then it's not a community-facing event.
Okay.
It's not a community. It's still only for the students and the parents. Now, if they have a fall festival for the community, well, let's say for the parents, the kids, anybody in the neighborhood, aunties, uncles, the lady across the street that
Yeah,
can
I
bring her
don't
cat.
think many schools do that for security.
Yeah,
It's
that's
free and open to the public. Those are
Right.
like that is the,
Free and
those are
open
the
to the public.
watchwords.
Got it.
yeah, free and open to the public. Thank you for that question. All righty, so moving on. Ineligible activities, again, we are just reiterating the same thing with the schools. This is just an excerpt of that. There are other ineligible activities, but I'm just focusing on what we changed or clarified for this year's guidelines. And then last but not least, we updated the logo because we had the Community Arts logo last year. This year, we're changing it to the Office of Arts and Culture's logo. And then we've also Office of Arts and Culture logo. And then we also added the links so that they can have access to those, as well as an example of the logo. So that's pretty much all of the changes. So if you have any other questions or concerns, I'm happy to address those.
Any questions? Thank you, Rhonda.
Sure.
Excellent job.
No.
Okay. So we are now to the section of our meeting where we have
No, stop. I have worked with Rhonda basically my entire career at the city. Every time I come up here with guidelines, it's Glenn, what about this? Glenn, what about that? Glenn, what about this? I don't think so, Glenn. Every time
Every time
Rhonda comes up here and she gives everything, nothing.
This is a private conversation. I'll deal with him. Don't worry.
Glenn, could we put Rhonda on the Arts Activate guidelines?
Yeah, it seems like we should.
Yeah. We love you, Rhonda.
Great job. Great job, Rhonda. Okay.
Thank you.
Now, after that little outburst, Mr. Assistant Director, we are ready for our OAC staff update.
Don't let anyone ever tell you that I wasn't professional. Okay. I know, whatever. All right. I have a couple of staff updates. One of our biggest ones is there's not really much to go about. I just want to make sure that all of y'all are continued in the loop, and the fact that we haven't forgotten any of this, of course, that we just don't have any actions to take just yet about the Dallas Black Dance funding reapplication. In our last meeting, we got sort of the thumbs up on what direction to take these funds, but they will come to you not necessarily in one big tranche. We'll come to you with whatever sort of respective use we have for them as we go through, right? So we talked about CAP, community arts, joint cultural center project, which we spoke about as that large sort of cultural center dance project, culture value and arts activate round 3, right, in those particular amounts. So you'll see here some notes and then what sort of allocations we need to expect this to come back up in. So CAP, for instance, Rhonda talked about her sort of audit reallocation of funds. So we'll come back in May on that one. Or June, I just said because I wasn't sure when you were going to be done. community arts and various projects. We'll come back with a schedule to present to you in March to see what that looks like. I need to follow up on our joint cultural center project, see where we are with that. So we'll talk about that in March. Culture of value, those allocations will happen in August. And of course, we'll look, I believe we look at our allocations for round 3 in March as well. So that's just as an update on where all of that is. All right. Oh, and my second one is Julia should be back next Wednesday. And then back in the, I think remote, because it's usually her remote day. And then back in the office on Thursday. So I, out of the goodness of my heart, will give back her job. So she can now do all of this for you instead of me. And I really love that for me as well. I think that's it.
Thank you so much. Okay, on our committee chair updates, I initially said that I had 0, but I actually have 2 things. First of all, I want to thank Commissioner Holomo for presenting the COP guidelines at the full meeting of the Arts Commission last month. Neither Commissioner Hornbuckle nor I were available, and Commissioner Holomo did a spectacular job of presenting it and asking all the questions, and it went through commission with flying colors. I really, really appreciate that, Tino. That was a huge help to us, and thank you for stepping up and taking care of that. And then secondly, I cannot say the name of the award because it has 15 words in it, so I'm going to ask Commissioner Jackson to tell you about it, but our own Commissioner Jackson recently received the Best in Photography and the Best in Show at a spectacular show that is going on at the African American Arts Museum right now. And Commissioner Hornbuckle, do you want to speak to this, or shall I make Commissioner Jackson brag on herself?
Well, let me just say this part, and I want her to brag on herself, but I am so amazed and proud of what she has done and what looks like a short period of time, but this is what she's been doing her entire career in photography, and it's just the cream rises to the top, and we're so proud of her. I was there. I wish I could show the video at the point when they were making the best of show. I said she's gonna get it, and I have the video of her of when they said she won it. So I wish I knew that this was coming up. I would have shared it with everyone so you could see the amazing moment. But I'm so proud of her. But I'll let her speak on her award. But I'm so proud of what she accomplished over the years.
Thank you both for putting me on the spot. I was totally not expecting that. Thought we were wrapping up. I had the pleasure and the honor to win Best in Show, Best in Photography, as Commissioner Bragalon mentioned. It's for the Carol Harris Sims National Black Art Competition and Exhibition. It's biannual, so it's not a yearly competition. And as a result, I get both a cash prize, and we'll have the honor of being able to have a solo show at the African American Museum within the next year to 2 years, depending on the schedule at the museum and my own schedule, which I am ecstatic about. And I thank you all for your support. Thank you, Commissioner Bragalon and Commissioner Hornbuckle, for your support.
I just wanted,
I want to say one more thing too. And also I want to point out, who is it, Commissioner, what's Jim's last name?
Nugent, yeah, the taco workers.
Yeah, Commissioner Nugent has been at every single one of my exhibitions and openings. I don't even know how he knew about this weekend, but he was there. And I know he's not here right now, but I just want to go on record and thank him for his support too. He's been a great supporter.
I think that is probably the one of the underlying facts as to why he is receiving the Silver Cup this year, because he is a tireless supporter of the arts. And of course, it's what we're all here about. So I wanted to be sure that we all knew that one of our own was moving in the arts world. Commissioner Hornbuckle, did you have something else?
Yes, Ms. Humble, Dr. Jackson forgot to share with the committee that she was interviewed by, I think it's Channel 5. Was it Channel 5 or Channel 11? One of the channels recently, Tuesday, and I would hope that she could share that interview with everyone else on the committee, or all the commissioners also.
Yes, you're right. That was, how did that slip my mind? Yes, I was. I was interviewed by Channel 5 and featured on Tuesday's night news at 6 o'clock. There was a snippet at 4, within the 4 o'clock hour, but then the longer, what do you call it, segment was at during the 6 o'clock hour on Channel 5 NBC News. And I will send that to the office, and they can send it out at will. Thank you for the reminder.
And all while continuing to take excellent care of her patients. So does anybody have anything else that they would like to share before we call the meeting to a close?
Commissioner
Commissioner
Chair,
Palomo? Yes.
thank you. So I'm leaving right now because I got to get changed. Somebody nominated me for the Oak Cliff Chamber of Commerce Community Advocate of the Year. And that's going on at the
Congratulations.
Kessler tonight. So Representative Vinton Jones is going to serve as MC. And that's where I'll be tonight.
Congratulations. Please keep us posted.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, all business before. Oh.
I'm not sure this is
I thought
something-
we were finished.
I thought so too. Sorry. I'm not sure this is something we're going to be able to decide right now. July 3rd, which would be the first Thursday in that month, would be our normally scheduled allocations meeting. That's obviously right before the 4th, as one might think. I would imagine none of us are going to want to do that. If you change my mind, if you want to, I would imagine that a lot of us might have plans or don't want to do that date. So let's keep in mind when, and we can always decide this later.
Let's look at that at our March meeting, especially since we are missing Commissioner Daniel. That way
Yes.
we'll have everybody's input, but typically when that happens, we move it to the following week.
Just want to put that
Which
out
will
there.
be the 10th, I think.
Something like that.
Yep. So just take a look at that. Okay. Congratulations to Commissioner Holomo and Commissioner Jackson. All business before this committee being concluded. I call it to adjournment at 5:44 p.m. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Guys.
Thanks, y'all.